Welcome to Malpractice Podcast.
So, are you ready to get started?
I am ready. I'm glad it was your turn because I was not paying attention.
Well, you pointed at me, so I thought it was
Yeah.
my turn. I don't know if it's my... I think it is.
No, it was.
Okay.
I mean,
Feels right.
at this point.
Also, my name is Jess, and that's Sydney.
I'm Sydney, the one with the raspy vocal fry. 6 1/2. Like, it is what it is.
6 1/2. That's my favorite phrase.
I think it's supposed to be 6 of one, half a dozen of another.
Yeah.
Is the full one, but you just say 6 1/2, and
Yes.
it makes me say that.
So I said it the other day to one of my clients, and he laughed, and then he was like, I'm sorry, what does that mean? Because I literally said 6 1/2, you know.
Yeah.
And he's like, ha ha ha.
What?
I'm so sorry. I can't lie. What is that? And I was like, oh, it's like 6 of one, half a dozen of another. And
I
he was
respect that so much, just to be like, I don't understand, because I will never tell you that I don't understand what you're talking about.
like, me either.
So I went to a happy hour trivia night with Eric's coworkers, and Eric works at NASA, so they all talk in acronyms,
LOL.
and they'll say something to me like, oh, did you hear about Eric doing this work on the SPDM project? And I'm like, that doesn't mean anything to me. Also, there was an email that went out to NASA. I have this email. We can put it on our Instagram if you want.
That's funny, yeah.
So an email went out to the NASA campus that was like, hey, just FYI, the female geese are nesting, and if you get close to their eggs, the male geese will attack you.
Yeah.
Eric said one of his coworkers had to be escorted to her car by security because the geese kept trying to attack her.
The geese are sexist?
I don't know, but they hate her.
Yeah, does Eric get attacked? Because Eric's pretty great.
No, Eric doesn't get attacked. Well, no, but he also knows not to go by there.
He's like, no, I'm good.
Eric's a mind my own business kind of guy. Do you want to get started?
Sure.
Because we got a lot to do.
It's a lot today.
Okay.
So
Go.
So last week, Sydney covered FDIA.
Yeah.
Basically, Munchausen by proxy, but the real name, which is factitious disorder imposed on another.
Yeah.
In the covering of that, she touched on this story about one mother-daughter situation that's cray.
Mm-hmm.
And we were like, oh, we should cover this.
Essentially, I did a 2-minute version of this story, but while I was doing the reading for it...
No, it's crazy.
It's just insane. So that's what you need to know going into the story. It is nuts. There's twists. There's turns. You're going to like it. We like it.
There's spirals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole thing is just a spiral down the drain.
It's a teacup ride.
Correct.
We just spinning.
Yeah. Okay.
This whole story is essentially medical fraud and murder. So in 2015, this woman, Dee Dee Blanchard, essentially faked that her daughter, Gypsy Rose, had cancer and almost every other illness that you could think of. Dee Dee said that Gypsy had it.
If you could think of it, she had it.
If you've never thought of it, she also probably said she had
Correct.
it. If you've ever seen the Netflix show The Politician, it's likely that character, Infinity Jackson, is based on the story. And if not, wow, that's a big coincidence because it's the exact same situation.
Correct. Exactly the same story. Also exactly the same personalities, but go on.
Literally, they look the same, so
yeah.
Whatever. If it's not, it's a lie.
It is. I'm sure it is. Yeah.
There's also a Hulu docuseries about this case called The Act. This is the craziest story, and there's 2 crimes here. We're not going to bury the lead. We're just going to tell you one of the crimes is murder.
Yeah. And
one is essentially medical fraud, endangering a minor, probably assault, and definitely child abuse. So big, crazy, crimey energy today.
Like Jess said, the story is wild. We could not get enough of it when we started researching, so here we go. The story of Dee Dee Blanchard, whose real name is eventually revealed to be Claudine, caused a huge media frenzy when this woman that everyone essentially knew to be like very sweet and charming and devoted, this mom to a very sick young girl, Gypsy Rose, was found stabbed to death in her Missouri home. So we're starting off with the murder. Forensics experts were able to determine that Dee Dee's body, before it was discovered, had been laying in a pool of her own blood for around 3 days. What drew them to the house that Dee Dee and Gypsy, the daughter, had lived in together was a cryptic post on Dee Dee and Gypsy's shared Facebook that just said, quote, "The bitch is dead." Why is it that a shared Facebook page is one of the biggest red flags in this entire story for me?
I have so many thoughts on shared Facebook pages.
I think it's gross. That's my thoughts.
I think it's strange. I don't know. And like getting into the story, it's even more strange that they would have like a mother-daughter Facebook page.
100%. But I think for them, it's like they're trying to portray this image of like we're best. Well, Dee Dee specifically is trying to portray like we're besties.
Right.
I just think it's insanely gross. And when couples do it, I'm like, oh, y'all don't trust each other, huh?
100%. That's
Right?
exactly what's going
Okay.
on.
Okay, perfect.
And probably shouldn't.
So, concerned neighbors contact the local police who found Dee Dee and immediately started searching for her disabled daughter, Gypsy, whose stockpile of medications for all the various issues that we talked about and her wheelchair were still in their home, along with, although there was no trace of her. I lost my train of thought for 1 second while I was talking.
I was about to say, along with what? What else?
So now that we've got you hooked into this wild ride of a story, we're going to do some background.
Yeah. People who knew her described her and her being Dee Dee/Claudine as a large, affable woman who wore bright, cheery colors, which, back up, the number one reason I never want to be murdered is because I do not want to hear how people who know me describe me, and I cannot stress that enough.
Do you like that?
First of all,
did you like that line?
was a thought that Sydney had added to the script, and the reason I'm laughing is, goddamn, I so agree.
If someone ever describes me in this unflattering a way, I will haunt you from the grave.
Obviously, this is why I do not wear bright colors, number one.
Number one.
And then the rest of it is number two.
If I ever die and someone is like, she was a large, affable woman, I swear to God, I'm going to haunt you. That's period.
So that's...
Okay.
Yes. And really, we could end the story there, but why? So we're going to, like, throw it all the way back.
From day one.
That's going to start with Dee Dee, Claudine, Mayor number one, getting married in 1991 to a man named Rod.
Mm-hmm.
They had a daughter in July, and they named her Gypsy Rose, which is a name. It's a choice.
I'm jumping in here because did you know that apparently she was named after a burlesque entertainer / stripper? The OG Gypsy Rose was a stripper.
That just makes the story even worse, and I never thought it could get worse.
I literally know. I wanted to tell you. I wanted to be the one to tell you this fact so I could see your face when it happened.
I'm so upset.
Okay, keep going.
It's a lot.
It's aggressive, yeah.
So thank you I'm like really stressed. Right after Gypsy was born, the medical problems started, she says in quotes.
What medical conditions did you believe you suffered from?
Leukemia, asthma, both vision and hearing impaired, muscular dystrophy, and seizures.
Rod and Dee Dee almost immediately got divorced. And then Dee Dee took Gypsy, and we have to wonder what would have happened if Gypsy had gone with her dad. Because her dad was like a pretty good guy.
Yeah. Although, so I do think he was actually a good guy, but Dee Dee described her newly former husband as a drug addict and a deadbeat, but that's not quite the story that Rod had to tell.
No, it's such a lie. She would get money from him and then tell her neighbors that he never
was a
sent
deadbeat.
money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he says that he was sending around $1,200 in child support every month, which in 1991, that's fat stacks, baby. Anyway.
Fat stacks.
Also, when they got married, according to Rod's side of the story, he was only 17 and she was 24 when he got her pregnant.
Oh my God.
Which is why they got married.
Ew.
Which also, if you think about a 24-year-old dating a junior in high school.
Oh my God.
It's super creepy and it feels like grooming, but okay.
Rod stayed like really involved in Gypsy's life, really until they ended up leaving the state, and so we'll get into that later. But he like would see her as often as he could. I think he was a good guy. I think Dee Dee's a liar, pants on fire.
I think so too. Even after he had his own family, I feel like he tried to stay involved in her life.
Yeah.
Which is, whatever. He sent money, he stayed involved with her. But Dee Dee was very, like, guarded about how often she was letting people spend any time from the very beginning with Gypsy. Also, from the very start, she was portraying herself as, like, the best mom ever, this, like, tireless, single mom who sacrificed everything for her baby. She was also convinced almost from the very beginning that something was terribly wrong with her daughter.
Yeah. So Gypsy was like 3 months old, and the first lie occurred, which was sleep apnea. After being taken to the hospital several times for sleep studies, which, like, as a bebe, like, you have no consistent, what do you need a sleep study for?
Good question.
But anyway, the doctors found nothing was wrong with her.
Yeah.
The one truth that did come up medically was that Gypsy was born early and had a chromosomal disorder. That part is true.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about Dee Dee. What kind of mom was she?
Very protective.
Do you think she protected you?
No, not in certain ways, yes, in other ways, no. I think that she was very sick in her mind. For a long time, I believe, like, we were best friends. And when I was younger, she was my best friend.
She was your only friend.
Yes, other than my stuffed animals. And so I thought that she was a great mother, no complaints. We got along so perfect. You know, I saw her as an angel that could do no wrong.
Also, I think I said this in the FDIA episode, but sleep apnea is one of the most common FDIA associated diagnoses because it is commonly the result of smothering.
Oh, yeah, you did tell me that. You did say that.
Yikes.
Dee Dee's a cray-cray pants, and now we're going to get into what I like to call Gypsy and Dee Dee the Wonder Years.
Okay.
Which is, like, all of the medical shit that Dee Dee really put her daughter through. And at the end of the day, Gypsy was abused.
For sure.
And that's it. That's the tweet.
Like, extensively.
Yeah.
So Dee Dee told everyone essentially throughout the rest of her life that Gypsy had a whole host of illnesses, including muscular dystrophy, which meant to Dee Dee that Gypsy required a walker that will eventually turn into a wheelchair. When she was 7 or 8 years old, she was on a motorcycle with her grandfather. They got into a very minor accident.
I feel like that minor accident is another Dee Dee lie because I don't believe you can get in a minor accident on a motorcycle.
Dude.
Like, that shit is scary.
Motorcycles are so scary to me. I do not play games with them.
It's like literally a car, no case.
A car minus all the safety features.
It couldn't be me.
And also there's your head just like out there for the world to see.
Yeah, out there in the wind.
Couldn't be me.
No.
But Gypsy was actually fine. She had a scrape on her knee, and that's essentially it.
That's like the best thing that ever happened to her was what's that scrape on her knee.
Despite the fact that it was just a scrape, Dee Dee decided that without several major surgeries, her daughter would need a wheelchair for life, and that was a moment it started going strongly downhill.
Big dip energy. She dipped right downhill. Gypsy was taken out of school after 2nd grade because she couldn't thrive in public school, said Dee Dee.
Which, who amongst us?
Wow.
Could thrive in public school?
I feel like I thrived. I'm here. I existed.
I survived.
Yeah, we're fine.
Yeah.
And so Dee Dee decided, like, you can't thrive in public school because you have too many issues. I'm going to homeschool you.
While she was being homeschooled, she also taught herself to read using the Harry Potter books, which same.
I love the Harry Potter books.
Same.
At this point, Dee Dee also quits her job as a medical assistant to become a full-time caretaker for Gypsy, which, if you haven't gathered, is a fucking unnecessary thing to do.
Yeah.
This may be like my personal worst nightmare. I will have a nightmare where Dee Dee is my personal full-time caretaker. I will gouge my own eyes out.
Yeah, and she's going to be smothering you in your sleep.
She probably is. you may be thinking at this point, like, what the heck happened with Rod?
Mhm.
Hello, Gypsy's dad, like, save her. He, like, did visit, and he just never got any alone time with her. So that's something Sydney said. And Dee Dee was, like, literally a hovering creep.
Helicopter mom.
Yeah. And Rod thought, oh, she really cares about Gypsy. Like, she's telling Rod she has all these ailments. And Rod's like, oh my God, thank you for taking care of her. Blah, blah, blah. Take my money. But then it got, like, really hard to actually find time together. So as her lives progressed, Rod would try and create more opportunities to see Gypsy, and Dee Dee would change the plans at the last minute and was, like, super evasive. And then she would, you know, tell everyone that Rod was a disaster, even though he was, like, sending her money. Basically, Rod was shut out of Gypsy's life by Dee Dee.
Yeah, it's super sad. And I feel like at this point, you may also be thinking, surely this mother-daughter duo had other people who cared about them to check in. And the answer is yes, they did. But whenever anyone in their extended family would call to check on Gypsy, Dee Dee would, like, put them off. She eventually moved to the other side of Louisiana, where they lived in a rundown apartment on only the disability checks that she began collecting on behalf of Gypsy and her illnesses and the money that Rod sent them.
Yeah, and Dee Dee actually lived with her parents, with Gypsy for some time, and
Right.
they got, like, so just basically they were trying to tell her to stop this shit, and then Dee Dee was like, I'm out, and I'm taking Gypsy.
Correct. And I read something, so she was a medical assistant at this time.
Which is also terrifying.
Another one of the red flag hallmarks of FDIA is working in healthcare. And apparently she may or may not have facilitated the death of one of her parents.
Oh, yeah, I did see that.
I read in, like, a couple of different sources, and I was like, I don't know if I should include that because it doesn't seem too reliable.
I mean, Dee Dee's not reliable,
But-
so it's a free-for-all.
We're all about the hearsay here on this podcast.
Well, apparently.
At this point, Dee Dee starts telling people that Gypsy has leukemia and epilepsy and she can't eat correctly, so she has a feeding tube installed in her stomach when she's 10 years old, which everyone else thought she was 8 years old at the time because Dee Dee told everyone, including Gypsy, that that was her age.
Yeah.
She also put Gypsy in the Special Olympics.
There's so much to unpack here. Who is doing the surgery? That is my number one concern.
Yeah, I feel like that's the thing that we should talk about. It highlights a lack of oversight in the healthcare that she was receiving.
100%.
Because at no point were these doctors who could not diagnose anything triggering red flags, right?
Yeah.
And they should have been. Okay.
You know, back to Dee Dee's bullshit. So she had Gypsy's salivary.
Mhm.
She had her glands removed, which, bitch.
She said that she slobbered too much, right?
Yes, she said she's lying, which also, who cares? Like, that's like saying you're breathing too loudly.
Correct.
I was going to say it, and I was
I'm
like,
with
that's
you on
kind of
that.
crazy. Let me not say it.
I didn't even know that you could take out somebody's salivary glands and them be okay, because it's like an important part of your food digest. Oh, she has a
She wasn't-
food tube in her stomach.
Right.
This is crazy.
Right, so
Okay,
she-
keep going.
Which is also like, well, then why is she having so much saliva if she can't even eat? I think she's just making shit up.
Oh, I think so too.
Due to all these medications and all this shit, poor Gypsy, like, her teeth actually started to rot. And so they were replaced with bridges. They were, like, living with Dee Dee's parents. Like I said, they confronted her about the treatment of Gypsy, and they didn't actually think that Gypsy was sick,
Mm-hmm.
which, whatever, like, same. That paired with, like, some legal issues at the time, like, Dee Dee was writing some bad checks. I know this is a shocker.
Yeah.
Dee Dee was like a fucking criminal, was writing bad checks. She decided to move to Slidell with Gypsy, and they were living in public housing at that time. So they left her parents. She was like, you can't tell me. I know everything. Gypsy's a mess. And then they continued to go from specialist to specialist, searching for new confirmed diseases.
Yeah. And so to add some chaos into that mix,
Yeah, sprinkle it in.
2005, sprinkle it in, Hurricane Katrina caused them to evacuate to Missouri, where they quickly became local celebrities while championing the rights of people with disabilities. So in this super conveniently timed storm, Dee Dee essentially decided that she could claim that all of the medical documentation had been lost, so she did that.
Yeah, she was like, oh, this is a
She
bop.
said, I can blame this storm
I'm Audi 5000.
for everything. And that's what she did.
Yeah.
So Mama Dee Dee decides to tack on some
Oh, yikes.
other illnesses that Gypsy definitely, quote unquote, had. And then essentially she can just go to the next doctor and be like, oh, the last doctor said this, this, and this.
Yeah.
She's a medical assistant, so she knows what terminology to use, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, she essentially just starts trying to convince doctors that Gypsy has everything.
Yeah.
So seizures, vision issues, although none of the tests that they ran showed any signs of medical issues, the doctors did end up putting her on anti-seizure medications, and they did surgery on the muscles of her eyes, which it's lunacy.
Truly. When they got to Missouri, as some people call it, Dee Dee convinced Habitat for Humanity to build them a home with a wheelchair ramp and a jacuzzi. And I fact-checked that because I'm like, what? And it's because she said that Gypsy needed it for her muscles.
Oh, yeah. Did you see the house?
Yeah.
It's also bright pink. That's neither here nor there.
That is everywhere, actually.
Like Pepto-Bismol pink.
It is gross.
Yeah.
This build got a bunch of attention from local news. Gypsy received Child of the Year in 2007 from the Olay Foundation. In addition, they stayed in like Ronald McDonald houses, had free flights to hospitals, went to Disney World, concerts. She once met Miranda Lambert through Make-A-Wish. Like,
Yeah, all of this was covered by these charities that they were they were essentially tricking these charities. It's crazy.
yeah, maybe not Gypsy.
Well, no, not Gypsy, but Dee Dee
just Dee Dee.
was
Yeah.
using Gypsy to get all of these charities to give them things, which is nuts.
I just don't understand how somebody can do this to their child that they're supposed to protect and love, not use them as a cash cow and use them for their own means.
And it's hard. Like, you didn't want to tell somebody, but Gypsy eventually does try to, like, escape.
She does.
So,
yeah.
Gypsy was not really with the shit.
No.
And Gypsy believed what her mom was saying. You have to remember, she's being brainwashed. She's being groomed. I mean, it's an abusive situation.
Right.
I just want to say that because at first I was like, Gypsy, you a part of this too, but Gypsy really thought that she had these illnesses.
Yeah.
Like, she believed her mom.
The other thing is she is on so many medications at this point. Like, she's on prescribed painkillers. She's on anti-seizure medications. She's on a host of medications that she, keep in mind, does not need. Like, I would not be surprised if that damaged her brain function at the time.
100%. And I know this is one simple thing to focus on, but if I was Gypsy and my mom said I was sick and I was like, okay, well, I feel fine, and then my teeth started rotting out of my mouth, I'd be like, you right?
Yeah, right.
I'm so sick.
During this whole time, Dee Dee is shaving Gypsy's head.
Yeah.
She's doing all of these things to keep her, like, small and frail. There are some pretty well-founded pieces of evidence to support the idea that she was probably also poisoning her.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And, like, starving her.
Well, yeah,
Anyway.
she took her everything good out of her life. Can't have saliva, can't eat,
Right.
no teeth.
So that's important. You made a really good point. I think with this type of abuse specifically, I don't want anybody to see Gypsy
yeah.
as anything more than the victim.
Yeah, and to, like, capitalize on that, Gypsy is quoted as saying, like, we are a pair of shoes, never good without the other.
Yeah.
Obviously, on the outside, people believe them, too. Like, it's not like she didn't fool everyone. She was fooling everyone.
Yeah.
One, like, Gypsy was super sick, and her mom is, like, taking care of her, trying to do the best for her very ill child, and Gypsy looked sick as fuck.
Yeah, she did.
One neighbor said they were perfect. Here is this poor sick child who's being taken care of by a wonderful patient mother who only wanted to help everybody.
Whatever they were going through was incredibly hard for them, especially with the medical conditions. And so everybody gathered around them and would try to help them out as much as possible.
Right. Now, this whole living human interest story that we're spilling the details on gets a lot of press, which doctors start seeing. One of them was a pediatric neurologist named Bernardo Flasterstein. I wish I was making up that last name, but I'm not.
I really like Bernardo as a name, though.
Yeah, Bernardo's cute. Flasterstein is wild.
I like it as a first name. Switch them. Blasterstein, Bernardo.
Oh my God. Oh, we should do a bet, and whoever loses has to name their child Flasterstein.
Michelle will never.
Oh, no, you can't. Okay, so Flasterstein offers to see... I can't say it without laughing.
Flastington. That's his new name.
Flastington offers to see Gypsy at his clinic, and this guy discovers very startling information. Not only does she not have muscular dystrophy, but she didn't have any of the things that her mother claimed she did. In fact...
Which, bitch, duh.
Yeah. He said he didn't see a single reason why she wasn't walking on her own, because at this point she's fully wheelchair bound.
In a wheelchair, yeah.
And when her mom walks out of the room at one point, he goes, "Hey, could you stand up for me?" And she does it. And the mom comes back in and he's like, "Why is she not walking on her own?"
Did you always know you could walk if you wanted to?
Yes.
She told you you had to stay in a wheelchair when you could walk. How did she convince you to do that?
I was so young, so me looking up to her so much and just believing that she knows best, I didn't question it.
Did you believe you were sick?
There are certain illnesses that I knew I didn't have. I knew that I didn't need the feeding tube. I knew that I could eat, and I knew that I could walk, but I did believe my mother when she said that I had leukemia.
And so Dee Dee starts making all these excuses. And at that point, this doctor decides to start poking around. He was able to find some doctors in New Orleans who still had records of Gypsy, and their findings...
That's such a shock.
Yes, right. Because the hurricane, right.
Yeah.
And their findings matched his, and that's when he began to suspect that Dee Dee, rather than Gypsy, might be the one who was sick. So he immediately suspects FDIA or Munchausen syndrome by proxy. We talked extensively about that last week. This was actually the first of at least 2 known instances where doctors believe something was wrong with the situation, and Flastington has gone on to say he really wishes he had done more for Gypsy at the time.
We do too.
But unbeknownst to him and everyone else, Gypsy had also begun to suspect that something was seriously wrong with her mother.
Shit is cray. So Dee Dee's like a big liar pants. She's also been making her daughter pass herself off as younger. She forged birth certificates to keep Gypsy young. It's not funny. I don't know why. I literally read it the first time and I started laughing.
I don't know about you, but for me, it makes me so anxious that I feel like my coping mechanism is to like laugh about it a little bit.
Well, it's like Gypsy was very, very small.
Mm-hmm.
She would wear these like
enormous
the glasses that you wear when you want to pretend to be an old person, like you get from like a dollar store. The very big like readers. And she had no teeth, remember? Plus she had like shaved head because Dee Dee would shave it because her hair was all falling out from chemotherapy, which wasn't happening for her leukemia. Like she does look like young because of all of that. Like if you see a picture of her, one, she looks very sick. And 2, she looks really young, but she looks like a little sweet, sick child you want to take care of. And Dee Dee looks like a raging psychopath, in my opinion.
When I see her now, knowing what she did to this child, I can only think of her as like a mentally ill con artist.
She looks like someone that you wouldn't want to let your kids go over to their house to play. And that's a non-judgmental way. That's the least judgmental way I could say it.
Yeah. It's just so weird because I'm like, everybody says that she's super nice and she had everybody fooled, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. In 2009, the police actually got an anonymous tip and went to do a wellness check on Gypsy, which, tell me that call is not coming from inside the house.
It's coming from somewhere.
Okay.
Or the doctors.
Oh, honestly, I hope it was a doctor. So they get there, they find these like forged birth certificates and these aliases for both Dee Dee and Gypsy, which is weird AF, right?
Yeah.
She told the police at that point she kept changing their names to avoid an abusive ex, which we all know now is not true based on Rod being like a nice guy.
And it's also crazy that the police weren't like, well, what's his name? And like, let's check into it. If they had done a real look-see, they would have found there's nothing under the rock. So
Because you would think if they were doing their job, they would have been like, oh, let us help you with that. We can help you.
Or just like double check. You're called in for a goddamn wellness check on a child.
Right.
You don't need to go into their provider of care and take their word for it and go about your merry way.
Right. Because of cases like this. Like, this is why you can't just do that.
Because of common sense and decency.
Also, you find
What is
multiple
wrong
birth
with you?
certificates. Something's going on.
That's weird. Also,
That's
You're not
period.
doing it on your own. If you have an abusive ex, the police will help you.
Right.
Well,
Well,
I'm not going to get into a riff about how much the police will help you.
we don't have to,
But
but
You don't need to have multiple.
Mhm.
Like, why wasn't anyone ever, well, I need to talk to Gypsy on the one-on-one, and how's your dad? Is he mean to you?
Yeah, that's the least they should have done.
Like, point blank period. The very least.
Now we're going to get into the murder, the aftermath, all of that.
Is that the Wonder Year? No, we just did the Wonder Years.
Yeah.
This is the Twilight Zone that we're in right now.
Dee-doo-doo-doo, dee-doo-doo-doo.
We can't do very much of that,
That's
right?
Twilight Zone, right?
Yeah.
No.
So, obviously, shit's hitting the fan. Once the whole story comes out,
Yeah.
we also find out that in 2011, Gypsy had actually tried to escape her mom's abuse with an older man she met online because these was the times.
Mhm.
Because Gypsy was starting to realize, bitch, I'm not sick.
Right.
She knew she wasn't sick, so she was like, stranger on the internet, you're better than my mom.
Correct.
This plan failed, and Dee Dee brought her back, smashed her computer to pieces, and then threatened to physically harm her if she did it again.
Also, did you read anywhere? Okay, because I read this.
Yes.
She chained her to the bed and said she would smash her fingers with hammers.
Yeah, hammers.
If she tried to do this again.
And I ran away from home. I didn't get very far because she found me pretty quickly and took me back home. And boy, was I in a lot of trouble.
What happened when you got home?
She smashed my laptop.
How did she smash it?
It was a hammer. And she told me if I was to contact anybody, any of her friends, and tell them that she would take a hammer to my fingers next time. And then she put a bell on the door, so if I tried to run away again, she could hear it. And she had taken handcuffs and a dog leash and tied it together and tied me to the bed, chained me to the bed.
So how long were you tied to the bed?
About 2 weeks.
Which, that fact alone
Straight to jail.
is all I really need to hear. Straight to jail.
And spoiler alert, Gypsy said, okay, Mom, I'll just buy some time, and then I'm doing it again.
Bye-bye. She also tries several times in between the first attempt and the one that eventually works, more than once leaving their home on her own 2 feet, which, remember, everybody thinks that she's wheelchair-bound in her Ronald McDonald Pepto-Bismol pink house,
It's
right?
Habitat for Humanity.
Oh, whatever. Whatever.
I was like, what happened with Ronald McDonald? Oh, she went to the
The
Ronald
Ronald McDonald
house.
house.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, anyway.
That's funny.
Okay, perfect. So it's whatever. It's a pink house. That pink house alone is child abuse, but anyway.
It's the abuse to common decency.
So more than once, she walks out of their house, walks up to a neighbor's front door and asks for help. But Dee Dee would always catch her in the act and lead her away with excuses about how the quote, life-saving, in heavy quotations, drugs that she was on were addling Gypsy's mind, or saying she's neurologically atypical and she doesn't know what she's talking about. She told people that Gypsy had the mental age of a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
And this is when she's an adult, essentially. So while everybody in the neighborhood is essentially continuing to buy Dee Dee's manipulative stories, Gypsy is starting to get fed up, all caps, fed up.
Gypsy is like, you about to really catch these hands that I know work.
That I know work.
So fast forward to 2012, she meets Nicholas Godejohn in a chat room. That's the meet and greet. That's the meet cute of 2012.
Also, did you know it was a Christian singles chat room?
No, but
It was.
I'm appalled.
Same.
They fell in love. They flirted. They were like, this is it. I'm getting married.
Right.
In 2014, they arranged to meet in person at a movie theater.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, Gypsy's 21 and Nicholas is 23. For a while, the only schemes they were cooking up were ones that would allow them to be open about their relationship and to have sex, because did you read that they had sex at the movie theater? Because I did too.
Yes, I did.
And I didn't put it in,
Yes,
but now
I did.
putting it in, I'm getting embarrassed.
Yeah, basically she said that they met at the movie theater with her mom there.
Oh, yeah.
She makes an excuse to go to the bathroom. They hook up in the bathroom. Y'all nasty. Okay.
Well, facts. And then, okay, again, I don't condone anything about Dee Dee, literally her entire existence, but as a mom I would never say, yeah, you 23-year-old, take my daughter to the bathroom.
I don't think that's what they did. Did they? Is that what they did?
I'm just confused.
See, in my head, the way that it worked out is they kind of met there separately, and they were both like, hee sneaky texting, let's go to the bathroom.
Oh, I think her mom actually met him, though.
She did meet him, but I didn't know if it was after or before the bathroom sex.
We're spending a lot of time on
either
this.
way, it's gross. Okay.
It's offensive to me that it happened. I'm offended.
Same. When Dee Dee made it clear that she will never accept any form of independence from her daughter, they both, Nicholas and Gypsy, essentially decide to murder her to free Gypsy from her clutches. Essentially, Gypsy says that she was waiting for someone to come along and save her from her mother. She saw Nicholas as the right person for the job. They plotted the entire scheme out on Facebook Messenger over the course of about a year. In June of 2015, Nicholas came to Springfield, snuck into the house while Dee Dee was asleep. Gypsy let him in and gave him a serrated knife, and then went to hide in the bathroom. While she lay there sleeping, Nicholas stabbed Dee Dee 17 times in the back while Gypsy was listening from the next room. So things have officially escalated to the max.
Yeah, if you're like, what is happening? Now we're at the murder part.
Correct.
I heard her scream once, and there was more screaming, but not like the kind in a horror film, just like a startled scream. And she called out to my name about 3 or 4 times. And at that point, I wanted to go help her so bad, but I was so afraid to get up. It's like my body wouldn't move, and then everything just went quiet.
The two allegedly had sex, stole $4,000, and fled to a hotel motel Holiday Inn. I don't actually know if it was a Holiday Inn, but it said motel, and I changed it to hotel.
Holiday Inn.
But it
it's
was
bad
probably a
press for
motel.
Holiday Inn, but maybe.
But maybe. A couple days pass, and then that bizarre post on Dee Dee's Facebook wall that we mentioned earlier, the bitch is dead, popped up.
Yeah. At this point, concerned neighbors start phoning the police. There was another post. Did you see that one?
Mm-mm.
Okay, there was a second post. I am not going to say it because it makes me extremely uncomfortable.
Okay.
There's a second post that is even worse somehow, and in it, the word fucking is misspelled as Fucken. I don't know why it makes me so uncomfortable. But that misspelling is almost worse than the post. Whatever. Okay.
I don't know either.
So the police responded. They're waiting for a search warrant to be granted. And so friends and neighbors start gathering outside of the bright pink Springfield house. When the warrant was finally granted at 10:45 p.m., police enter the house and find Dee Dee, whose name they eventually find out is actually Claudine, face down in a pool of blood. With her medications and wheelchairs still in the house, police immediately began searching for Gypsy, fearing that she may have been abducted or worse, because everyone at this point, remember, is under the impression that she is reliant on those things to survive.
Right. So this GoFundMe account was set up to pay for Dee Dee's funeral expenses and possibly Gypsy's. Like, no one knew what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
They feared the worst. Like, even if Gypsy wasn't harmed or hadn't been like, worst case scenario, they believe she was like helpless without her wheelchair, medications, like life-saving medications. Remember, she's just like out in the wild, no support equipment like oxygen at her feeding tube. I mean, the list goes on. One neighbor did tell the police that she knew Gypsy had an online boyfriend, her boyf.
Right.
And the search was on skis for them. Police believed at that point that Gypsy had likely been kidnapped by the person who had murdered her mother, and they were like, maybe it's the boy.
Exactly. When they find Gypsy the next day, she is at the end of a tracking of the IP address back to that weird Facebook post.
Yeah.
Gypsy, when they found her, was in Wisconsin with Nick at his parents' house. Both he and Gypsy quickly surrendered, and Nick was taken into custody on charges of murder and felony armed criminal action. Remember, Gypsy surprises the absolute shit out of everybody by walking out of the house to surrender, and they're like, oh my God, it's a Christmas miracle. Gypsy is walking. Because she was not arrested at that point because they think she's been kidnapped by this guy.
And she's a victim, yeah.
Right, exactly.
The Springfield sheriff said at a press conference the next morning,
okay, good morning. I want to specify at the beginning of this press conference that this is an ongoing investigation. And I want to start off with saying things are not always as they appear.
That if that ain't the title of this episode, I don't know what is.
That is the tagline of this episode.
So the media in Springfield are reporting the truth then about what Dee Dee and Gypsy. That Gypsy had never been sick and always been able to walk, but her mother had made her pretend otherwise or lied to her, using that physical abuse to control her. And then also, I want to say, like, manipulating her by medical, like, she's manipulating Gypsy too. Like, Gypsy's also manipulated. So on the one hand, she's a victim. On the other hand, she is a murderer.
Right.
So that's when, like, the law enforcement start telling people not to donate any money anymore, until investigators actually learned, like, how extensive the medical fraud is. And, like,
right.
It was all fraud. Like, the extent of it is all of it. Gypsy told investigators, she told police, like, her mom made her do it, made her lie. When Gypsy was found in Wisconsin, she told the police she was 19 when she was actually 23, and she, like, didn't even know her own age. She actually believed she was 19. That's how much she'd been manipulated and lied to.
Yeah, which is to not even know your own age when you're an adult is... I don't know why that part stresses me out so much, but it does.
It's very stressful.
Gypsy's father, Rod, later said, I think Dee Dee's problem was that she started a web of lies and there was no escaping after. She got so wound up in it, it was like a tornado got started, and then once she was so deep in, there was no escaping. One lie had to cover another lie, had to cover another lie, and that was just her way of life. So now we're going to cover the trial, which is like a very public trial, starts in 2018. It comes out that Gypsy Rose had convinced her boyfriend, Nicholas Godejohn, over the course of about a year to murder her mother and end the abuse that Dee Dee was subjecting her to. The goal of their plot, they called it Plan B, which, please tell me what Plan A was.
That's funny. That was really funny.
Thank you.
That, like, got me off guard.
Thank you. So the goal of Plan B was to commit the murder and then run away together, start a new life. Because they're 20 and they think that that's possible. Right.
Yeah. After learning about, like, how Dee Dee had treated Gypsy, sympathy for her from the public was, like, crazy. Dee Dee... Like, basically, like, the fact that she had spent 23 years injuring, starving, poisoning, manipulating, incapacitating Gypsy, like, the public was outraged.
Yeah.
And this included convincing doctors to perform unnecessary surgeries. Like, all of this shit came out publicly. And so, like, I think that's part of the public outrage is now they're not just concerned that people are held, accountable for what they've done, but they're also like, but wait, Gypsy's a victim too. In fact, the first time in her life, Gypsy's life, that her father had seen Gypsy walk was during an arraignment hearing in Wisconsin.
Crazy.
Like, he had not even seen her walk before. and no one had prepared him for what was about to happen. So
Can you imagine that?
No.
If you thought your child was handicapped for life
starts
and then she just
walking?
walks, like healthy hair, walks into a courtroom.
like has hair, yeah.
Right.
That's the number
for the
one.
first time in her life.
That's crazy. Early on in the court hearings, the prosecutor, Dan Patterson, announced that he would not be seeking the death penalty for Gypsy or Nicholas, given the case was extraordinary and unusual. Bitch, if you could say, understatement of the fucking year.
Literally.
Both Gypsy and Nick were initially charged with first-degree murder, and in Missouri, like, usually that comes with the death penalty, but...
Yeah,
like,
at
as
least
an
it's on the
option, at
table.
least. Yeah,
Mhm.
but he said, nah, we not gonna do that. Duh.
Gypsy's attorney, on the other hand, was a public defender named Michael Stanfield who drew her case at random and had no idea what he was in for. Can you imagine? This public defender, like, gets into his office. He's like, ready to start my day. Woohoo. Picks up this case.
He's like, Gypsy, that's a name.
I have to imagine he was like, what the fuck
I know.
am I in for?
Yeah, agreed.
So he kicks this off with months of digging around to find her actual medical records in Louisiana. And what finally arrived was seriously damning evidence. It revealed a complex web of lies over time that showed an almost entirely healthy child being put through extensive and really invasive medical procedures that were completely unnecessary.
The thing that shocked me the most was the closet inside Gypsy's house. She had even written on several of the bottles of Gypsy's medication as if she was writing it for a child. For the anti-seizure medication, it would say, shaky baby. The organization of the medications was shocking to me because in every other area of Dee Dee's life, it appeared that she had absolutely no organization or cleanliness, except when it came to these medications. It let me know from the very beginning that something here was seriously wrong.
So basically, he gets this evidence, he calls the prosecutor, and he's like, yo,
come on, man.
This case should not go to trial. Right. So they work out a plea deal. Gypsy pleads guilty to the charge of second-degree murder, and the judge actually gave her the minimum sentence of 10 years, which she is currently serving, although she'll be eligible for parole at the end of 2023.
Okay.
Gypsy was so undernourished also that the year she was in county jail, like waiting for the court proceedings to be finished, she gained 14 pounds.
I saw that.
Stanfield said that most of his clients typically lose weight in jail because the food is shit. She gained 14 pounds.
I mean, a vibe.
Like, she needed to.
She needed to, 100%. She's also probably like, oh my God, food. Gypsy said about herself in 2018, the prison that I was living in before with my mom, it's like I couldn't walk, I couldn't eat, I couldn't have friends. Like, she was cut off. Couldn't go outside, you know, and play with friends or anything. Over here, I feel like I'm freer in prison than living with my mom because now I'm allowed to just live like a normal woman. That's what she said.
Which is the saddest thing I've ever heard.
Ever in the history of life.
Okay, now we're going to get into Nicholas.
I feel bad for Nicholas.
I feel very weird and conflicted, so I'm just going to present some facts real quick. Just
present the facts.
One, two, three, four. He was the one who actually killed Dee Dee. Remember, he stabbed her 17 times. That's a lot of stabbings.
Right.
During discovery, prosecutors found a message from him that said, quote, "Honey, you forget I am ruthless, and my hatred of her will force her to die." This is in a text message to Gypsy. Quote, "It is my evil side doing it. He won't mess up because he enjoys killing." That's fact number 2. Fact number 3. Gypsy did testify against him, including saying that she only had sex with him after the murder so he wouldn't do something sexual to her mother's body, which he admits he considered doing during his taped interview and confession with like the investigators. Fact number 3. Here's number 4. After extensive psychological evaluation, his lawyers claim that he has an IQ of 77 and is also on the autism spectrum, so he may have diminished capacity, was their argument. And that's 4 facts I just wanted to bring up because I feel very conflicted about him.
Dude, here's the thing. Here's my real honest opinion. Do I think he was probably not a great person? Yes. Do I think that he had the plan, he would have come up with this plan on his own? No.
No, I also don't think that either. And when his trial starts in 2018, that's like the first thing that prosecutors bring up is they talked about it for over a year. So you can't say it wasn't premeditated, but then his defense is essentially arguing that, number one, he has a diminished capacity, which we talked about. And number two, he was trying to help the woman that he loved, which they kind of painted Gypsy as like the manipulator of the situation who convinced him to do it.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
yep. I kind of agree. Gypsy actually testified on the third day of his trial. She told jurors that she had suggested the murder plot and that the two had concocted the scheme together. So she was like, you should murder her. And he was like, yeah, let's think about how. Because
sounds good.
When I first read that, I was like, but now I get it. She mentioned that she considered trying to get pregnant to make Dee Dee accept their relationship, which is obvious. Maybe that was plan A.
Maybe that was plan A.
That's plan A. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Now this is plan B. Obviously, you can decide for yourself what's better.
Yeah.
After 4 days, the case was sent to the jury, which is a shockingly short amount of time.
4 days.
They deliberated for 2 hours, which is never a good sign for the defendant.
No. If they come back the same day, you're fucked.
They
Go fuck
found
yourself.
they found him guilty because he did Stabbington her.
Correct.
On charges of first-degree murder, for which he's sentenced to all the years, so...
Yeah. Also, I feel like the taped confession where he talked for a full hour didn't really help his case a lot.
Okay, I'll admit it. I did actually stab her mom. I will admit it.
So when you're stabbing Dee, where is she at?
She's on her stomach.
Did she scream or holler or...
Yeah, she did.
What was she saying?
First she said help,
And then what did she say?
and then she called up for Gypsy, but Gypsy didn't do anything.
Listen, I don't actually believe... I don't think that people should be allowed to talk to police before they've had contact with a legal professional.
Well, you can ask. Like, that's what you're supposed to do if you get arrested. Just say, I want an attorney.
I think it should be, instead of I need to opt in, I think people should say, I opt out.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
Like, I think the legal professional should show up to your cell or whatever, the interrogation room, and be like, I am a lawyer.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk to me?
Yeah. I especially have an issue if the person potentially does have a diminished capacity and you're interrogating them.
There's so many cases like wrongful convictions. There's so much. That's my platform when I run for president of the United States.
Love that. I'll vote for it. I actually agree with that. I think it's a good idea.
Thanks.
Mark Feldman, an international expert on factitious disorders, stated that this was the first case he had ever experienced in which an abused child killed the abusive parent. And this case is obviously crazy. It's also incredibly sad, and it feels like the numerous doctors that she saw throughout her life, many of whom did not actually even believe she was sick.
Right.
Which is reflected in her medical history. Like, there's documentation that they did not think she was that as sick as her mom thought she was. Not one of them ever made any moves to trigger any kind of investigation.
Straight to jail.
And I think that that's a serious misjustice. Yeah. I think that the medical community seriously failed her over the course of like 20 years. So.
To end this crazy story on a kind of bright note, I suppose. According to her stepmother, Gypsy is like thriving in prison.
As much as you can.
Which literally speaks to how terrible her life was before.
Mm-hmm.
In 2018, she was like working towards her GED and had like rebounded from a lot of the unnecessary medical treatment she received for most of her life. Gypsy said her mom would have been the perfect mother for a child who was actually sick. And then she said, but I'm not sick, and that's the big difference.
Yep.
Mic drop, Gypsy.
And that's what we know about that.
Yeah, thanks for sticking around.
We hope you like this story. Go do some reading about it if you are interested, because there is so much that we could not fit in this episode. It's a lot.
Like and subscribe. If you have a crazy story, send it to us and we will cover it.
Yeah. Don't forget to leave us a review wherever you like to listen. It really helps us grow our audience and
our love for ourselves.
Correct. Our personal self-esteem is significantly increased by a positive review. Okay. Otherwise, thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
And don't forget, malpractice makes perfect.
Perfect.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.